We also got the basket.
Good evening, folks. There's plenty of room down front if anybody wants to come down and, I guess not, huh? Hey, my name is Pete Georgiantis. I'm this year's chairman of the Budget Committee. Real quickly, I'd like to recognize Senator D'Alessandro. Thank you for participating. And I'd like to introduce the members of the Budget Committee. Representing the school board is Diane McCarthy. Representing the Board of Selectmen, Scott Gross. Representing the Village Water Precinct is Richard Fletcher. And then we have Ivan Bellevue. John Burt, who is not here at this time. Guy Karen, who was the vice chair this year. Elizabeth Dubriel. Brian Fournier. Ruth Gage. Lisa Jukes. Brian Lewis. Lee Sperry. Joe Sporl, who is not here. And our secretary this year was Joanne Duffy. Just real quick, the reason why we're here is we're required by RSA 32 to present the Budget Committee's budget at a public hearing. And that's what we're here to do tonight. We're going to start with the school first. Everybody's got their school budgets out. Everybody get their information up front? This is both sides of the paper. So you have the expenditures on one side and the revenues on the other. The Budget Committee this year was faced with some challenges. Some of the significant increases that impacted the budget where this is just on the school side. Retirement for $453,000. Health insurance for another $421,000. Special education tuition, an extra $53,157. Charter schools, which were mandated to do, were $85,571. And transportation costs were $18,771. We've also included in this year's budget $25,000 for the track as a shared expense with the school, with the town. I'm sorry. In order to get to our number, which is an increase in the budget number, if you look at the bottom of your page, of $1,129,000. In order to get to that number, we had to do some cutting. It was an attempt to try to keep the amount of the increase down. When we say cutting, we're not really cutting the budget, we're cutting the proposed budget and not an existing budget. We eliminated some positions to start with. Bartlett, we cut back on the custodian. They wanted to add days to the custodian, and we cut back. We wanted to increase world language to a full-time position at Mountain View Middle School. We cut that out. We wanted to increase the custodian hours at Mountain View Middle School. We cut that. Goffstown High School, a new math positions. We cut that out. There were some positions that were moved out of the SAU budget into the school's budget. So that also impacted our budget. So the bottom line of our budget, not to be late, you all have it in front of you. If you have any questions, what I'm going to ask you to do is come up to the microphone, state your name, and we'll be glad to answer them. Come on, it can't be that easy. Kat Marks, you want to ask a question? I know you do.
Well, I actually didn't hear what you just said, but I'd like you to just go through it a little bit, because I haven't looked at this at all.
Yes,
Okay.
Do you mind? I mean, you don't have to do it in detail, but
Well, if you look, Tess, on the sheet that we passed out, you have that sheet?
the column sheet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah?
If you look over to all the way to the right, it shows the increases and decreases by percentages.
Okay.
So you can kind of get an idea of where the budget numbers come from and where there are increases and decreases. We went through the line. I don't know if I know you have tests, but some of you folks have probably never seen a school budget. Can you hold that budget up, Brian? We went through that line by line, page by page, line by line, and tried to make adjustments wherever we could. Sometimes it was $500, and sometimes it was more, as you saw on the positions that we cut. And I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to see these, but as you can see, yeah, the positions we cut were new positions. They were not existing positions. Like I said in the beginning when I said there were retirement and health insurance, that's stuff we couldn't touch. I mean, it's just there. And there's nothing we can do with those things. There was a shift of costs from the state down to the local level, and we just had no option but to assume it. And we'll see the same thing when we talk about the town side. There's just shifts that were done. There were some hard cuts made. We just had to do what we could. Go ahead.
So this is test marks again. I think the school's got, I really haven't read this, Peter. I'm so sorry. The school has also a building proposal going on. Is the budget committee supporting that?
We'll be going at that in just a moment. That's a special article, so, and was a handout out also, which we'll cover in a few minutes. But that's not in the budget item. That's not in the budget. That's a special article.
And do you typically take a stand to support or not support or recommend or not recommend?
Any money article will have a budget committee recommendation.
Okay. And can we go back and forth between those two things, or are you going to close conversation after we've studied this one piece here? I mean, our questions to you.
I'm not really sure what your question is going back and forth.
If I don't have a question on this yet, because I'm trying to read it really fast, but I have it when I get bored and I read it later in a minute, can I come back and ask you a question?
Sure,
on this?
absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
For you, anything, Tess.
Thank
you. You were passed out, or you picked up front. And to be honest with you, the budget committee has not actually seen this yet, or the article. That was passed last week. So, so was it the warrant written last night? Article 2, if you want me to read it, I'll read it to you. Article 2 has to do with the special article on the elementary school. Hopefully, the Bartlett Elementary and Maple Ave, hopefully everybody picked up one of these out in the hall. Yeah. Tess, you wouldn't have such a hard time if you were sitting down. All right. So the article, the passage of this article shall override the 10% limitation imposed on this appropriation due to the non-recommendation of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee has not recommended this. We hadn't seen it, so it's kind of difficult in this form to do it. It wasn't done until just recently. Huh? Yeah, it was done last night. So this article could change. To see if the town of Goffstown School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,532,000 gross budget for the purpose of construction, renovation, and equipment at the Maple Avenue Elementary School and the Bartlett Elementary School, and for the costs incidental and related to the foregoing purpose, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $14,186,780 or of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to authorize the school district officials to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon. Furthermore, it is authorized the withdrawal of $345,220 from the Bartlett Capital Reserve Fund created for this purpose. Furthermore, to raise and appropriate the sum of $271,566.75 for payment of the first year's debt service on aforesaid bonds, such sum to be raised by taxation. This appropriation is in addition to the warrant Article 3, which is the operating budget, and it will take 3/5 the majority to pass. Like I said, the Budget Committee hadn't seen this. This was just done by the school board last night. That's not unusual. Sometimes things like that happen. Yes, we will be close to it. Go ahead, please.
Well, I might as well just speak because we're a very quiet room.
Okay, I think maybe you should step up here so it's on the...
Obviously,
Test marks.
Obviously, I've not gone through any of this, as you've heard from my previous 5 comments. But earlier this fall, I stopped at Bartlett and walked through that building, and I was embarrassed. I love the education that happens in that building. I love the atmosphere that they create there. But I was embarrassed that we let our students go there when we have taken closets out of places and put them in the hallway so that we can put a classroom in what was a janitor's closet, and think that we're putting kids in a safe environment there. I like the kids that go to Bartlett. I like the families that go to Bartlett. I like the teachers who teach there. I hate paying a bigger tax bill. And I know, Peter, you haven't looked at these numbers yet, but I'm going to really encourage us to do everything we can to get this ball rolling, because we're probably never going to get a better borrowing time, and we've got to do something in that building. So however we make it happen, I think we've got to move on this puppy. And let's look at the numbers and make it happen.
The numbers on that project are about 71 cents per thousand for the tax rate. Diane, would you have a breakdown on it? We don't have that.
Oh, it's very simple. Just to clarify, based on the bond hearing that we had last night, my notes indicate that in year 1, the impact is 20 cents on the tax rate. In years 2 through 20, 71 cents on the tax rate. And per the bond hearing last night, we were looking at 3.25% on a 20-year bond, which is very favorable for us.
Thank you. As Diane McCarthy, school board.
Is there anybody who can walk us through a little bit of what's presented here so that we're looking at more than just numbers and percents, but an idea of...
On the school, as far as what we're going to do?
Sure.
Is that the project, the scope of the project? Superintendent, do you want to address that? Like I said, we have not seen the project ourselves yet. So.
Well, let's do it together.
So the plan would be, and this is a committee that's been working on this project for about 3 or 4 years now. We started by looking at looking at all of our schools, looking at different setups, looking at different structures, and determined that the best and most cost-efficient project would be to add on and renovate both the elementary schools. At one point, there was conversation about adding on to Glen Lake as well. The committee determined that cost-effective-wise wasn't a good avenue to go down because it didn't do anything to Bartlett or Maple Ave. You also had those additional costs to renovate them. So the committee's been meeting both with the architect and engineering firms to come up with the plans. That this has been over 2 years. We've been meeting with them. We have the design plans done. All of that was paid through impact fees, so we were able to do that cost effectively. Basically at Maple Avenue, it is going to be a 10 classroom addition, which will eliminate the need for portables. It will give everybody a classroom space. Right now, art and music are on the cart, so they have to travel. Our technology is all done in a closet. Our library is also our technology room, so if you ever go in there, the computers are right on top of the books. The students are right on top of each other. It will also add a main entrance. If you've ever gone to Maple Ave, there is no main entrance. We have a door that's marked as the main entrance, but there's also many visual places that you could seemingly guess to go into the school. As you know, with safety and security things, one of our goals was to make that building as safe and secure as we possibly could. This will create, by the gym, an addition that will be an administrative area that will house our administrators, which right now are not housed together. They're not even near the main entrance, so should we have an emergency, they're not even housed near the main entrance. It will create a space where they will be housed, our nurse and our guidance counselor, so we'll have the main core team right there. It will create a main entrance to the school. It will also allow for ease of traffic flow patterns. We'll revise that, add some additional parking, get rid of the portable out front, which we will look to repurpose, hopefully, to use that for something else in the district. At Bartlett, in addition to that, it's renovating the school, the new windows. Many of our windows are from the original school, so it would be putting in cost-efficient, energy-efficient windows, cleaning up and revamping the bathrooms, which are, again, probably, if you've gone into them, the 1960s vintage tile. So it would be revamping those bathrooms and really getting back some bathrooms. We have converted bathrooms into conference rooms and small workspaces, so we'll be getting those bathrooms back to bathrooms for use. At Bartlett, we actually had multiple conversations about what to do at Bartlett, and the committee eventually determined that an addition definitely needed to happen. We struggled with the whole 1920 building, 1910 building that we would be sandwiching in a newer wing with an old wing and then a newer wing. With the oldest part of the building, if you've been in Bartlett, the classrooms are tiny, the hallways are wide, it's not good storage space, it's not good use of space, and so the committee determined the best use of that space would be to tear it down and start over. And so we would be just keeping that front wing and adding on, I believe it's 7 to 10 classrooms, a new library space. Again, renovating that front wing, we would be removing asbestos in all of our schools, which is something that we continuously have to deal with, abatement and removal and fixing of asbestos problems. We would also be looking at adding in the cafeteria space. Right now, the majority of the kitchen is in the gym, which obviously is a hazard for students who are taking gym class and playing with balls and basketball, and you've got a kitchen line outside. They don't have an appropriate cooking facility. We have freezers and refrigerators in the gym. The gym floor needs to be redone, and so what this would do is add an addition on the back of the gym for a kitchen, for actually a service cooking area as well as a service line, so the students would be in there. We'd keep all of the kitchen equipment out of the gym. We would revamp the gym with a new floor. Again, adding additional space. It would remove the portable, again, in the back of the school. We have a full double-wide portable back there that currently houses our library and additional small group space. Again, we would take back some bathroom spaces that were converted into small group space and conference rooms. Right now, art is on a cart, music's on a cart, library is in a portable, so again, students needing to go to the library have to walk outside to get there. So we'd eliminate that. Give us a good technology space, again, upgrade all the infrastructure. And certainly with the majority of the building being new, we would be looking at as much energy efficiency as we possibly can by doing that. If there's anybody on the committee who wants to jump in, but I think that's kind of a global overview. It's really upgrading, taking back spaces. At Bartlett, Bartlett is our most packed school. We just have not a single space. We finally gave the teachers back a teacher's room, and if you saw it, it's about a 6x4 closet that they have a little refrigerator in there and can actually eat lunch. So it's, we found that little space for them because otherwise it's really eating in our classrooms. which if anybody knows a healthy environment, you want to give them a little break time. So it really is adding on good space for students and making sure we do all the security upgrades as well. Does that help?
Yeah, but I'm sure we're going to hear more.
Yeah.
Jennifer Thoreau, 698 Back Mountain Road in Goffstown, member of the school board and also member of the building committee, current building committee. Stacy just did a really nice job with the overview. One thing that she really glossed over, which I'd like to really point out to you, is that also included in these plans is the bundling of about 5 years worth of maintenance that has been delayed because of default budgets, having to choose between maintenance and education. A lot of those upgrades are also going to be taken care of with this expansion. We plan on the budget, the renovations committee does plan on attending several local events in the near future at the kindergarten and also at the elementary schools with their upcoming programs.
Michelle Remain. I'm a parent of a student at Maple Ave, and I attended a PFT meeting last week, and I'm not sure that I would accurately remember. So are we not in violation of a few Department of Labor laws in terms of where the kitchen staff is working? There's a couple of violations that Suzanne talked about, and I don't know if anybody on the board or the building committee can talk about it, but they are finable, but up to around $1,000 a fine. Should we be fined for some of those? So I don't know if that's something that's come out. I know with the board or with the committee. No, Suzanne talked about it. I didn't know.
Jennifer Thoreau again. I'm not familiar with the cost of the fines, but I know that at least the kitchen is in constant violation of the health code. Thank you.
How you doing? Tony DeFranco, Goffstown. I'm also the chairman of the Building Facilities Renovation Committee. If anybody would like to talk to me after the meeting, I'll make myself available. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I will do what it takes to get an answer for you and get back to you. As far as some of these the questions that I have heard, I just got here. I apologize. As far as some of the code violations, there are several. However, I do know the fire codes are one of them. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you walk through the Bartlett School. Anybody have to turn sideways to walk down the hallway? Keep your hand up. Now, let's just picture for 1 second a firefighter with his Scott Air pack on the back carrying a child. That's not going to be an easy thing to do when all we're doing is walking through the hallways. So I'm not trying to scare anybody. All I'm thinking of is my daughter. She doesn't go to that school. She goes to Maple Ave. They have issues over there as well. The committee thought long and hard about both Bartlett and Maple Ave and what we need to make the schools better for our community. If you really look at the Bartlett School, the reason that we thought about that we are going to tear down that middle section of the school, it was built in 1922. The maintenance cost for that alone is sky high. We're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to win anything by just adding on to that and sandwiching the oldest part of that school in between two newer sections. When the time does come to make changes or do something, we're going to be inconvenienced as a town once again by doing something like that. And I think it's kind of foolish. That's why the committee, after a lot of studying, a lot of numbers, we decided that it was absolutely better for the town to get rid of that middle section and do it the correct way. As the superintendent said, we're going to be taking care of a lot of other issues. Asbestos is definitely one of them. We're adding libraries so the kids don't have to walk outside through a parking lot or through what could be a play area to get to the library. As far as Maple Ave, we all know that there was how do I put this nicely, an incident a few weeks ago where they had a lockdown. All the children that were in the portable obviously were moved back into the school where it was much safer. With recent things in the news, that's obviously on the forefront of our minds. My daughter, like I said, does go to Maple Ave. As a father, I don't want her in a portable if something's happening nearby. I want that brick in between her and anything else that may happen. Let's just put it that way. Now, the reason I got on this committee a few years ago is I see a lot of construction sites, and I want to make sure that my tax dollars are going to something that's going to be useful. I'm not a millionaire. I really don't want taxes to go up, and I know sometimes it's a necessity. And I feel this is very important. But again, I got in this committee to make sure that things were done right, and I could save as much money as possible. I think it's inevitable that we have to add to the schools. I've had people ask me, why do we have to add? We're doing fine right now. Yeah, we're doing fine. We have portable classrooms. Really? That means we're already over our limit if we have to call somebody and pay for classrooms to be brought in. It just doesn't seem smart. I guess that's really, unless somebody has any questions, which I don't think I can answer at this time.
I think I would ask as the chairman of the budget committee for Diane to set up a presentation for the budget committee on this project. Maybe next Tuesday. I think that'd probably be a good idea. Thank you.
These are just real little questions.
Go ahead, Tess.
Thank you. The material that the school distributed indicates 7 new classrooms and 10 new classrooms. Is that additional classrooms or refurbished classrooms? That's my first question. And my second question is, if Bartlett is being pancaked and rebuilt, what happens during that construction time? Where are the students having school?
So you can do the first part, and I guess Stacy, will you do the second part, where the kids are going to go to school?
I don't think I know that. All right, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the first part of that question, if you don't mind?
Your paperwork says you're putting in 7 new classrooms in one site, 10 new in the other site. Are those new classrooms in addition to those that are already existing, or are they refurbished classrooms? Are you adding space or just updating space?
The answer is both. From demolishing part of that school, we are replacing the existing classrooms and adding a few new classrooms as well. So we will have more classrooms at the end of this than we do now.
Can you give me actual numbers with those two things?
It's definitely 10 Maple Ave.
Yes.
It's definitely
Yeah, 10 at Maple Ave.
10 brand new classrooms at Maple Ave, and you will have X brand new classrooms at Bartlett.
I believe it's 4. I'm going to say don't quote me. I'm going to put the 4 of them up.
Yeah.
I will find out for sure. I don't have I'm just not prepared to
Yeah, I
do what I'm doing right now.
It's renovating the class. It's replacing the classrooms that are already existing in that 1922 section and adding additional classrooms plus a library.
I believe we're adding 4 to Bartlett in addition to what's already there. So the classrooms that we were taking away, we're replacing, obviously, with brand new ones, and we're adding, I believe it's 4 additional.
Thank you.
What will we do with the children? And actually, I believe that I haven't been part of this process over the last 2 months, but I know there's some conversation. I think really what the goal has always been is to work on Maple Ave, get Maple Ave completed, so that we have those classroom spaces, move most of the students from Bartlett to Maple Ave in those new spaces while Bartlett is being renovated. The committee has looked at multiple different options. We looked at bringing in portables. The problem is we have no place to put additional portables. I mean, we talked about bringing them here to the high school and setting up an elementary school with portables in the back, but we don't have the facilities to do that here, even at the high school. So we were very creative on looking at what are our options while we're doing this. Working with the builders, they believe they can meet those timelines, so it would be basically we would start to focus on Maple Ave, get that building done, move Bartlett students to Maple Ave in those new spaces, which we can fit them in, and then work on Bartlett and then move the students back to Bartlett and then reconfigure and spread everybody back out into the new spaces.
And your projected completion date would be what?
I believe it's 14 to 18 months. Is that
For both sites?
correct?
Thank you.
The architects, engineers, and builders have been working with us extensively to look at those timelines and timeframes to meet them.
Thanks.
If I may just add to that, part of the reason that we had looked at that, moving the children, instead of doing two simultaneous projects, by finishing Maple Ave first, it's going to do several things. It's going to make the job site a lot safer for the students. Just with all the construction going on, that amount of construction, and all those same amount of children at that school site, again, to me, elementary school, everybody wants to see the big trucks and what's going on. It just didn't seem like a safe alternative. And the amount of traffic on that road would be insane between the construction workers, the trucks coming in and out, dropping off supplies, etc., the people that are going to have to park in that area to work, the electricians, the plumbers, etc. I understand it's a inconvenience, but moving people over to Maple Ave is where the construction will be completed at that point, or at least mostly completed, will be a lot safer for the children in a school environment.
Your name, sir?
Mr. Commissioner Pierre Paul Pouliot, 64 Juniper Drive, Goffstown, otherwise known as Grassmere, 03045. Will there new classrooms? Does that mean additional teachers for both schools?
There's the new classroom spaces will just provide classrooms for everybody. This is not projecting any new additional space. I believe at Maple Ave, new staff, at Maple Ave, I believe there's a conversation around an additional teacher perhaps for fourth grade, because that is the one class that continues to have only 5 teachers. All first, second, and third has 6 teachers, and then in fourth grade, we have no space. We go down to 5 teachers, which means larger class sizes. So I do believe at some point we would be looking at perhaps an additional fourth grade teacher. Other than that, it's really giving everybody space.
Go ahead, Pierre. You have a follow-up?
I guess I just don't understand. And I'm not trying to be a pest about it, but if we're building new classrooms, extra classrooms, do we have 2 sets of classes in one room, or I don't get that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really, if you think about logistically, right now we don't have a classroom for our music teacher, so it would be giving music a classroom, it would be giving art a classroom, it would be separating our technology classroom from our library, creating a full library and a technology classroom. Right now, our specialists are all we have multiple specialists. For example, at Bartlett, I think we have 5 specialists who are in one classroom, sharing a classroom, so we would give them a little bit more breathing space, so we might use 2 classrooms. So we have small group spaces in a closet, so we would be giving them a classroom.
Thank you for the clarification, Madam Superintendent.
You're welcome.
Guy, you have...
Excuse me, Stacy, I've got a quick question for you. My understanding is that Maple Ave would be done first, and then the children from Bartlett who moved into the 10 new classrooms there while Bartlett was built. When they go back to Bartlett, what are we going to fill the 10 new classrooms at Maple with if Maple can handle them all?
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that those classrooms will then, Maple Ave is not going to see an ease of anything until the Bartlett students go back to Bartlett. And then we'll be able to move music into a classroom, art into a classroom, technology into a classroom. The people who don't have classrooms right now, the 5 people who are sharing a space will get a classroom.
Okay, and this will be done without additional staffing.
Right. I believe at this point that the only conversation we've had about additional staffing is potentially a fourth grade position.
Okay, thanks.
Again, I'd like to remind this is the first time the Budget Committee's seen this proposal also. So if there's any other members that have questions, feel free, but Diane, you'll set us up with thank you.
Peter, thank you. Dave Pierce, Mill Street, and I'm a selectman. I want to follow up on a comment from Mrs. Marks that I personally want to urge this committee to do what she said, do everything you can to make this article for the bond happen. It's a 60% threshold on voters, and it's a more demanding favorable vote than the majority. When I looked at articles that were going to cost several millions of dollars as special articles as a selectman, I went back to what I was hearing from the residents and my own personal view. If I stood back as a voter and I looked at all the infrastructure needs of this town, the children came first. And that to me meant that we should do everything we can to provide the best facility of the elementary schools to our children. And then we'll worry about the infrastructure needs of the town government. But the school comes first. And a few voters will see the filming of our discussion here this evening and favorable comments towards the school. But what every voter will see is the recommendation of this panel. And if you're severely split, they're not going to get 60%. And by golly, this school needs those favorable votes. So I really urge the committee to give an overwhelming favorable vote when you vote on this article. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Tess, did you get a chance to look at the rest of the budget?
I did. Thank you very much.
Are you all set now?
I'm good. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything?
Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
My name is Al Baines, 21 Catamount Road. I just have a question about the busing costs that are in the budget. Has a late bus ever been included in the school board numbers to be presented to the budget committee? Does anybody know the answer to that?
The answer is no.
It was never presented.
Not this year.
Not this year. It has in the past.
But not this year.
Okay. I would urge that a new look be taken at adding some money for late buses. What's happening with that is that there are things going on, particularly at the middle school, where kids are not able to participate in activities after school because their families can't provide transportation to come and pick them up. One of the areas that is suffering is the after-school program. Crispin's House no longer runs the after-school program. The YMCA is doing that now. However, it is affecting the Y's ability to draw kids into that program, and that's such an important program to keep kids safe after school from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 6 o'clock at night. It's prime time for kids to get in trouble. The after-school program that the Y is running has 14 kids in it right now. And I know for a fact that it also impacts kids that want to play sports, that want to get involved in after-school activities with clubs here at the high school as well. So if somebody is willing to take a look at that, I would support adding money into the budget. I've heard numbers in the past that it's like $25,000 a bus. So maybe it's $50,000 that we take a look at, but that's what I would urge you to do.
Thank you for your question, your comment. And just to reiterate what Elizabeth said, she is correct. The school board did not put forward funds for the light bus in their budget this year. We had tried to do so last year, but we were unable to do so due to the default budget. And this year, given the different budget constraints we had as far as the increased retirement costs and whatnot, we did not, as a board, move forward with the budget. But I definitely hear your concerns. And I agree, you make very, very valid points. I don't have a current number because it wasn't in the budget, so I can't affirm your $25,000 figure. But I don't think you're far off. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? See no other questions. We'll be done with the school and we'll move on to the town.
Mr. Chair, was there a handout for the town budget?
Yes, there was. Anybody get one? Again, on the town side, we had some downshifting of cost. A few of the assumptions that we had to work with were 3 collective bargaining agreements, which had a 3.25% increase in them effective July 1st, 2013. Benefits line assumes a 5.4% increase. Workers' compensation insurance went up. New Hampshire retirement system, I think we talked about that before, that the state shifted the cost down to the towns on that. Property liability insurance won't be set until October, but there was a cost there. Electricity assumed a 5% increase. Heating oil, 3-year average at 2.945 cents a gallon. Propane, we did a 3-year average at 1.495 cents per gallon. It's gone in the contract numbers. Gasoline at 2.866 per gallon, and diesel at 3.25 per gallon. These are all assumptions we had when we were doing our budget. If you have your summary in front of you, again, you can go through it and see where the Budget Committee and the Board of Selectmen agreed and disagreed on some things and made changes. There wasn't a lot if you look at the budget. The road program was probably took the biggest reduction. The Board of Selectmen had recommended a $1.5 million road program. It's currently funded at $500,000. The Budget Committee took it to, we cut $500,000 to make it $1 million. We doubled what was currently budgeted. That was one of the big items. On CIP, there was an item for a truck that we cut for $117,000. Was there something else you wanted to hit on?
No, I think those are the road program was by far the biggest, and the other one was vehicles.
Right. And anybody that's been in the budget process knows that usually that's where the people go to is the CIP and hit that. Police department had requested an extra officer, and that's not an extra officer, that's not right, it's a replacement that hasn't been for a couple of years. Budget committee did not replace that officer. We at the status quo that we're at for the last couple of years. Scott, did you want to hit on something? You said you wanted to.
No, I'm set. If there's any questions on any of the articles, I would certainly jump in.
Anybody have any questions on the special articles?
No, it's on the.
I'm sorry, I have to put to the mic so we can hear you.
That'll be your walking.
It's a simple.
You are simple.
Peter Romaine, Winter Hill Road. I just was wondering, I went over all the numbers and I like numbers. And there's not a lot of difference between last year, this year. I went over all of them. The PEG TV doubled.
We added a full-time position.
Yes, I just,
Yeah, they added a full-time.
And that was-
position.
and you
They took it from a part-time to a full-time.
and you're recommending that, right?
Yes, and that's coming, this actually has no tax impact, it's coming from cable franchise fees.
Okay. On a second comment, I'll make a comment since I made that long walk down here. I've taught strategic planning at Southern New Hampshire University for 22 years. And in terms of strategy in a business or in a nonprofit and in our town, if you want to do anything 5 or 10 years out, you must do things within a year. Okay, they're called functional strategies. Without doing them, you can't do anything further on. If you don't make the changes to this school now, you can't grow. You have to address the needs today. Putting it off only defers the costs. And that's all I can tell you from my experience.
Thank you.
Okay.
There is a, there is a public works collective bargaining agreement. Scott said he wanted to kind of cover a better sales job, and I mean a better job than I can.
Yeah, I'll take that. All right, you'll notice, hello, my name is Scott Gross. I'm the Budget Committee rep for the Board of Selectmen. You'll notice Article 13 is the collective bargaining agreement for the DPW workers represented by the Teamsters. You'll note that there are fiscal impacts in 2013 of $30,208, 2014 is $25,704, and 2015 is $39,897. Just to let you folks know, the Department of Public Works workers represented by the Teamsters have not had a contract for 2 years. And one of the things that is important to note here is that last year, this particular bargaining unit agreed to go with a different health plan system, and they also agreed to share some of the costs. So the town realized, I believe it was almost $30,000 in savings because they agreed to a memorandum of understanding outside of the contract. So I think from the Board of Selectmen's perspective, the DPW workers were very amenable in terms of trying to keep the costs down and to bargain in good faith, and that's why the Board of Selectmen is very much in support. You'll notice we had unanimous support in the Board of Selectmen, and the Budget Committee also voted 11-1 in favor of recommending Article 13. Are there any questions with respect to the financial impact of this? One of the key components I will add is that single employees, those who are not married, will contribute. They're contributing. They would 10% additional to their costs. And also the plan itself is also going to a less costly health insurance plan. And then the biggest thing that we're going to is a performance-based incentive, whereby in the past there have been step increases and cost of living adjustments. Now it's going to be performance-based. So there will be a minimum of 1%, a maximum of 3%, but based upon their performance as reviewed by their supervisor or their manager, they will be eligible for either a 1%, 2%, or 3% increase based upon their performance. So that's a pretty big departure from most of the bargaining agreements that we have, where they're usually step increases or they're automatic COLA increases. This one is kind of unique in that respect. So that is one of the biggest things I think that we have been able to accomplish with this particular collective bargaining agreement. Are there any questions?
If you see Article 14, 15, 16, and 17, all different articles, but they have no tax impact because what the Board of Selectmen have done is use of unreserved fund balance to fund these projects. So there'll be no tax impact, but there still has to be a recommendation on there. Article 14 is for $276,962 for the purpose of purchasing replacement municipal software and conversion of data funding to come from unreserved fund balance. So there's no tax impact. Does anybody have any questions on that? If you do, Guy Karen served on the committee. He could probably answer any of your questions on what exactly that finance package does. He went through it with us, but Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise the appropriate $169,425 for the purpose of purchasing software and converting data for the police department, funding to come again from unreserved fund balance. That's to convert all the data that's at the police department. And also, go ahead, Scott. I know you want to start. You love this one.
Yeah, well, I think part of a hearing is to at least explain it once, and then we'll explain it again at the deliberative session. But it's called IMC software. And essentially, it is the software, the operating system that almost all the police departments in the state of New Hampshire use to communicate between their cruisers, dispatch, etc. One of the reasons we have, I think the chief is here. I think there's only 2 departments who have the system that we have right now, and unfortunately, it doesn't allow for transfer of data from our cruisers to our dispatch. Now, what does that mean? Well, one, our police officers are spending a lot of time entering in information. Then not only do they enter it in, then it gets to our records department, they're entering it in again. So it's almost sometimes double and triple data entry. The other thing that is one of the predominant reasons why this is so critical to us is, as you recall, we had a couple of different departments, New Boston and Ware, who we used to dispatch for. Unfortunately, they decided to go with another dispatch center because they had this particular software. One of the reasons why most of the departments prefer this software is, again, it's less paperwork for the officers. They can do police work as opposed to doing paperwork. It makes them more efficient. And when you have small departments like New Boston, they need to try to get any efficiency that they can. So when the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee strongly endorses Article 15, we do so for a couple of reasons. One, we do need this software in order to be more efficient ourselves, but it's also a potential revenue generator. There have been informal discussions between our police chief and other surrounding communities about bringing these communities back into our dispatch center. Well, that's revenue that we'll be getting to offset taxes. Several years ago, I believe a couple of years ago, we lost about $42,000, give or take. Was it more higher than that, Chief?
I believe it was close to 60.
Okay, between the two towns, $60,000 in revenue. So we believe that in a short period of time, we will hopefully get these communities back to dispatching for them. And I have spoken personally to some of the folks in these other communities. They were very pleased with our dispatch services. However, it was the software that was the ability to transfer the data. That was one of the key determinants. Any questions on that one? I'll just stand up in case there's questions on 16.
Article 16, to see if the town will vote and raise appropriate $120,000 to address the culvert and slope failure on town land, including repairs to damage to the abutters land. Again, this funds come from unreserved fund balance. This is a piece of culvert that's damaged, an old culvert that's damaged out near the county farm property out in the back. It needs to be replaced. Any questions?
And there's also
where that is again? Where?
Can you give me the exact?
What'd you say? You want to know exactly where it is? It's the county farmland across the street from the nursing home.
Okay.
And there's two portions. One is a culvert failure where I'm not sure if it was during the Mother Day floods or another event, but a granite slab actually moved. So there is a danger that if we have another significant event, I wouldn't even say a 100-year event, but a 50-year event, we could see significant flooding and damage to abutting properties because we didn't do our job to take care of it. So there's a liability concern for the town if we don't fix this. That's the most important thing. Secondly, the other component to this is we have a slope failure on the rail trail also, which is in close proximity to this. They are in two different areas. There's, I would say it's, David, about an 80-foot drop-off from the rail trail to the, is that safe to say? It's pretty steep.
Yeah.
Once again, if that is not stabilized, we would lose a significant part of the rail trail. So that one is also a very critical piece of infrastructure that unless we take measures immediately to fix them, we're going to lose a good portion of the rail trail, and two, we expose ourselves to significant flooding, not just of our own property, but abutting properties, which then raises liability concerns for the town.
Which properties are those that are going to be affected by the floodwaters?
Can I defer to Dave?
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Both the slope failure and the culvert failure were caused by storm damage, and I suspect the Mother's Day flood, and we really didn't get to observe it till 3 years later. If these two failures, if the granite culvert, which is about 80 yards long and 70 feet below the rail trail elevation, if that culvert were to collapse, and effectively we now have an artificial dam 70 feet high, and with streams feeding into that dam, and there's no way for the water to get out, it's going to create a more serious problem that we don't want to ever tackle with a collapse of an earthen embankment. Granite culvert should be corrected, and less than 100 yards away, storm damage also created an erosion on the embankment. And unless that erosion is repaired and the water that caused it now flows in a more proper direction, it will only get worse. So a stitch in time will definitely save a lot of agony down the road if we don't do it. So, once again, I'm looking for a favorable vote on that $120,000, and will definitely be a good repair of our town infrastructure.
Any other questions?
Yeah, you still never answered the question as to where and what properties is affected.
Exactly.
Okay.
Where. If you're on Mass Road looking towards the county complex, and you have the main administrative building to your left, and you have the parking lot in front of you, and then there's a barn to your right. Further to your right is an old pigsty building. And then further to the right of that is a valley with two streams feeding towards the river, the Scottaquag River, and the culvert. It's under the rail embankment. So that's the exact location, about 100 yards right of the old Peakside building, which you can see that as you're driving along Mass Road.
That answer your question?
I'm just sorry, not to be a pain, but I'm just trying to see how is it affecting the other properties? Which properties is it affecting? Is it going to wipe out the rest of the Goffstown
Yes,
or Knoxville area?
Butter's property is county land on both sides of the rail trail. If this embankment were to fail, it washes out on the abutter's property.
And the abutter is the county?
Yes.
That answer your question? Do you know where it is now?
I know where it is, but okay.
I think when we're talking about not to be raised from taxation, but coming out of the general fund, or there was an audit that said that we had some money that we probably should spend. Would that be accurate?
Yeah,
Just
I was going to cover
approach
that. You're going to see this term unreserved fund balance, and the selectmen are going to have an article in the newspaper that's going to address that. But essentially, what that represents for layperson's terms is the balance of your checking account. Right? So, and over time, you're writing checks, you're getting paid, and in some cases, if you're writing less checks and you're getting paid more, then your balance is kind of going up. Other cases, it might go down. In this particular case, we over the last several years, the town has been able to maintain a very favorable fund balance, and there's a couple of reasons, for that. Several years ago, we made a little error, and there was a $600,000 encumbrance in our road program that we could not legally encumber, and that went into the fund. There have been other instances in which the selectmen had originally planned to use $500,000 of fund balance, and we decided to use less than that. So over the years, that fund balance has gotten a bit larger. There are two different entities that kind of look at our fund balance. One of us is the Department of Revenue, and there are others who are bond rating agencies, et cetera. Both have told us, and our accounting firm has told us, that we have a very healthy fund balance, and that that we could use our fund balance for one-time capital expenditures. They said $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. So the Board of Selectmen looked at some of the critical needs that we had in our capital improvements program, because we do have a fairly large backlog, and we selected these 4 items for one-time expenditures that would come from use of fund balance. A lot of times I get the question, well, does the school, can the school do that? Unfortunately, the school, although there's been changes to law, and I'm not sure if you're going to put that on your ballot, but in the past, the school districts have not been allowed to maintain a fund balance. They essentially, the town is responsible for collecting the taxes, and then the school district, through their treasurer, and our treasurer's here, will send us a note saying, we need to, can you disperse, $1 million or $2 million, and then the town then cuts a check to the school district and they pay their bills. And I'm not sure what the school will be doing with, there is a law which is allowing the school district to keep a certain amount of fund balance. But essentially, the town does have almost $5 million in its fund balance, and this would probably bring it down to around $4.2, $4.3 million. Still very, very healthy for what we need to maintain with the Department of Revenue Administration and also for bond rating agencies. So we have a little bit of cushion, and this is a good opportunity for us to try to overcome some of these items that we have without raising taxes in order to accomplish that.
Any questions on that? Jenny, can you come up to the... We never hear you sitting over there.
Judy McKinnon, 25 Meadowlark Lane. Is there a possibility of the town giving any of their unreserved fund balance back to offset taxes, like the school department does every year? Is there a reason that you have to keep $4 million in that account, or is there a number that needs? Because that seems like an awful lot of money hanging around. Could you explain how that works for me?
Essentially, the auditors and the Department of Revenue tells us there are certain targets. Unfortunately, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it's a certain percentage of what would be the combined budgets of both the school and the town. So if we look at the school and the town, we're probably looking at about $56 million. And we have to keep a certain percentage of that as the balance of the checking account, shall we say. What happens is that when you're collecting your taxes, let's just say we're in, the taxes are due December 1st. If people are waiting till the last minute to pay their taxes, and our coffers are not filled, we might only have $1 million or $2 in there, and then all of a sudden we then get a voucher from the school district to say, hey, we need to pay some bills. And in the past, we have had to work with the school district to say, okay, can we manage the money a little bit better and pay the bill next week so that we have the tax money to do it. So, and I don't know if Ray is here. I know maybe not in the last 2 to 3 years, but I know prior to that there have been discussions between town hall and the school district to make sure that we had enough money. So we do need an adequate buffer. And I will say that in terms of offsetting the tax rate, in the past the town has. I mean, we have used $500,000 of fund balance that goes towards tax reduction. In the past couple of years, it was $100,000. Last year it was $0. And what we try to do is we try to make sure that it stabilizes the tax rate, because one of the things that we're trying to be cognizant of is we don't want very wild fluctuations in the tax rate, so that one year people's taxes go way, way, way down, and then the following year they skyrocket. You're trying to stabilize it, and the use of fund balance allows you to do that.
Do you need a vote from the town to be able to expend those monies, or are you able to spend it on whenever you want to? Does it have to be like in a warrant article?
Yeah, in this particular case, we cannot expend funds without a vote at a town meeting and a budget.
Okay, thank you.
Cover Article 17. This has got a few things in it that's interesting. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $761,400 for the purpose of improving the intersections of Main and Pleasant Street, Main, Elm, and High Street. This article will be funded as follows. $446,270 from the CMAQ grant, $62,448 from impact fees, and then $252,682 from the unreserved fund balance. Again, there's no tax impact. One of the projects is to put a rotary or a roundabout. What are you saying no for?
There's no design, so don't bias the conversation.
Okay, well, that's in the budget committee. That's what we were told. So somebody got us some wrong information.
I'll come back.
All right. But yeah, that's the improvements to those intersections. To put it that way. But we were told there was a roundabout. Go ahead if you want to. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah.
The change stuff.
No, not really. But I want to defend the budget committee. I got to work with these people. The initial conceptual plans. We've done several studies. Most recently, corridor study, and as you all know, there are issues on Mast Road and getting through town. And you'll notice that CMAQ. There's a CMAQ grant. That stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant. And a couple of years ago, the town was awarded this grant to address the intersections at Mast Road and Main and Pleasant Streets, as well as Main, Elm, and High Streets, where the library is. Part of the initial thought process concept was the conversion of the Mast the Main and Pleasant Street intersection would be more of a roundabout type of intersection. And then there would be some modifications made to the intersection where the library is. I believe it was some initial discussions about creating some raised areas where it would kind of indicate where people should be traveling, et cetera, to try to improve the flow there. We have this grant. We got it a couple of years ago. If we fail to approve this year, the money will then be turned back to the granting authority. So what you'll notice here is that there is $252,682 coming from the unreserved fund balance. The reason why the board has that amount in there is, for some of you who follow this stuff, there is a developer who has a site that has been conditionally approved, right, Collis, by the planning board on Bog Road, I believe. And part of that condition of approval was that there would be off-site improvement fees. So because they are going to increase the flow of traffic on that particular intersection, the planning board said that in order to give them conditional approval, that they would have to put forth certain monies for that. I believe it was around $125,000. But the board, we cannot, once that development goes through, the town will receive that money from the developer. However, if that development doesn't go through, we don't get our money. So in order to properly word this article, we have to include the entire $252,682, and then if and when that developer does proceed with that plan, the town will get reimbursed those off-site improvement fees, and those will go back into the general fund. So as of now, as Selectman Pierce, and this way I'll prevent you from having to go up to the microphone. The initial conceptual plan was a roundabout. That may not necessarily be the configuration. Part of this grant is we would be then hiring a engineering firm, and then there'll be public hearings, and there would be discussion as to what is the best way to configure that intersection to accomplish the goals of mitigating the congestion in that area.
Thank you. Any questions on that? So the project is no longer a roundabout, maybe.
It could very well be one.
Go ahead. But let me say this is a budget committee.
When the CMAQ grant was put in by the town several years ago, yes, there had to be conceptual designs in order for the highway department, the state, to analyze the potential cost of the grant. So they were conceptual designs. That doesn't mean that will be the final design. When we look at High Street, Elm, and Main, if I speak to 20 residents, I'll have 20 different designs. And if you're looking at a major intersection, you would hope that you would have 50 to 60% of the residents all favoring one design. That intersection has been discussed for 20 plus years as to how it could be redesigned, and I don't think we can ever achieve 50% of the residents being happy with a single design. But we're going to with this passage of this article, a design firm will make several alternatives available for discussion, and then we'll try to resolve with the comments at public hearings, we'll resolve which will be the best to go forward with. And this is our last opportunity. If this grant is not enacted by this article, it will look bad that we've applied for a significant federal grant and then we turn it down after 3 years of discussing it. And it would be a long time before we would get another grant that would contribute a significant portion of money for a redesign of this intersection. And it's a package deal from the state level. It's the convergence and then splitting apart of Route 13 and Route 114. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, sir.
Joe McCarthy, Mountain Base. I just have an issue with how you word this in here, no amount to be raised from taxation. This is all being paid for by taxes that we've overpaid, that you keep in the coffers, so you say. That should be worded and let people know that they've already paid for this. This is money that you're spending, tax money that you're spending, essentially. It's just off here on the side. It might not be coming out of this year's taxes, but it's come from our taxes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's the way it should be worded. It shouldn't be worded this direction.
Yeah, but I can address that. I don't disagree with you.
The only reason why I bring this up is because we fight so much to get money for the schools, and this just looks like this is just money left over.
Yeah, I don't.
This didn't come from the taxes, but we have to fight for every penny for the school system.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. The wording of these articles, obviously they go through the Department of Revenue Administration. For those of you who have dealt with them, and see Ray smiling, they make you word these things in a way that, and again, we're going to touch on them when you'll see Articles 19 and 20, but they pretty much mandate what we write in these articles. We don't have a whole lot of leeway in what they have to get approved by the DRA.
I want to assure you that your sentiments and Ginny's sentiments were brought up at the Budget Committee meetings, that these things were discussed and brought up. So didn't go on. What you're saying here isn't something we haven't heard and discussed. Any other questions? We'll go on to Article 18. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $75,000 to be added to the fire department apparatus capital reserve fund established. It's already been previously established. This was voted on by the Budget Committee, 12-0. We realized that there was needed to do something because of the expense of the equipment, especially the fire department. Where one truck would cost you $1 million, that we needed to be able to have some funds there so when a grant came up, we would have some money to work with and we could secure a piece of equipment.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
That's pretty much what the crux of that was. Any questions, comments? Article 19. To see if the town will vote to establish a revolving fund pursuant to RSA 31:995-H for the purpose of cable access television provided by GTV. 40% of the franchise fee revenue received from the cable franchise agreement will be deposited into a fund, as well as the cable franchise equipment grants and monies in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund balance. Town treasurer shall have custody of these monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon order of the governing body, and no further approval is required by the legislative body to expend. Such funds may be expended only for the purpose in which it was created. If Article 12 and 19 both pass as presented, then Article 12 appropriation will be reduced by $84,030, which equals 75% of the appropriation budgeted for GTV. Any questions, comments? Just a couple.
Philip Pankos, Penardville. Will that effectively replace the GTV operating budget? Will that become the de facto operating budget, or is it a fund?
I'll explain it. For those of you, how many of those? Raise your hand if you have Comcast. Most? Okay. Some don't. Lou, you don't have Comcast? You might want it. It's a good thing. You can watch us more often.
Perfect.
Okay.
I'll buy it.
We'll send you the DVDs. Anyway, you pay a franchise fee, And essentially, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to almost self-fund the GTV operations. In the past, we get around $250,000 from the franchise fees. And then of those funds, about $60-some-odd thousand goes towards the operation of GTV station through their employees and the equipment and things of that nature. What this is essentially going to be doing is we're going to earmark 2% of the 5% of the fee, around $110,000. And that is going to be a separate budget for GTV. The remaining monies then goes into the general fund to offset taxes. So essentially, the budget for GTV, if this passes from here on, will be then determined by whatever increases or whatever the franchise revenues are, 2% of that, and this is going to be the current franchises for the next 5 years.
So it'll behave like the food service accounts at school?
Correct. Very much like that. It'll be a separate fund.
So you'll raise and appropriate the funds, but they'll be expended out of the monies that are collected?
I wouldn't say we're not raising and appropriating anything. There are fees that are being collected.
No. I mean for the operation, to the extent that I'm sorry, I don't understand it, but to the extent that there are costs for running GTV, that will still be part of the budget, but they'll be paid out of those dollars?
No, it will not be part of the budget. It's separate fund.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be a separate, totally separate fund.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on that one?
That's unlike the school.
It is.
Like the lunch program. It's not like that. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to establish a revolving, that's what we just did that.
Okay, 19.
Purpose of police special details. All revenues received by police special details will be deposited in the fund, and the monies in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund balance. The town treasurer shall have custody of all these monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon the governing body, approval of the governing body for the purpose for which the fund was created. If Article 12 and 20 both pass as presented, then Article 12 appropriation will be reduced by $55,480, which equals 50% of the appropriation budget for the police special details.
All right, I'll go over this one too. Another confusing one. The police department does special details for a variety of different functions, but I'll give you the most notable example, and that would be St. Anselm College. We set aside and we designate a certain budget for special details. If we exceed that budget, which can happen quite frequently, the best example would be this past year when we had a lot of the political, the presidential debates and things of that nature. We then have to overexpend that line. That means that we have to take money from other lines in the police department budget to cover those details. And it's not uncommon for all of that. You saw this last year where the chief of police will get a phone call saying, we need a detail at St. Anselm because the president or decided he's going to make a campaign stop or a speech, and all of a sudden they have to now provide potentially 8 to 10 officers to do a detail. That has to happen. And like I said, we would overextend the line, then we have to take monies from another line to cover it. So what this does is this creates a revolving fund where money is going to flow in and then money will flow out, and it makes the management of our police details much easier, and it removes it from the budget process after the second year, because we still have to fund it in the first year. Right, and there is revenue generated also from this in the respect that there are some administrative costs that you have for special details, and we do recoup those on the town side. So, Chief, is there anything else that you want me to add on that, or?
Other than that, this will take it out of even over budgeting. So if I over budget and it's taxed at $95,000 and I only expend $70,000, that $25,000 extra is still being taxed for that year.
Right.
So it's important that if we level it out and make it more transparent, that I think everyone can see what's coming in or what's coming out, and we're not guessing budget.
Yeah, more often than not, we've seen where it's gone over, not under. But in the case if it did go under, then in that particular case, it's just the money is coming in and going out, and it's much more transparent in that respect. So we've been trying to do this for several years. Yeah.
Just to clarify, when there is a request for a special detail, that not only the administrative costs are billed to the client, but the cost of all the officers and the cost of the detail is not borne by the taxpayer, correct?
That's correct.
It's borne by the requesting agency for the
That is correct. The requesting agency, in this case, let's say it's St. Anselm College, would then they would pay the bill to the town of Goffstown. And when there is a special detail, those special detail rates include not only the officer's time, but the equipment that's used, the police cruiser, that type of thing.
Any other questions on that? Article 21, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $20,000 for the purpose of supporting the nonprofit Goffstown Main Street program. This has been there for a while.
Hi, I'm Karen Henderson, president of the Goffstown Main Street program. And I just want to thank you for your support in the past years for the program. We really appreciate it and hope to have your continued support again this year. And we do appreciate that with all the requests that are on the table and money is tight, that the $20,000 that we're asking for provides us with an opportunity to help over 35 other nonprofit organizations in the communities that we support, as well as an opportunity for over 1,600 volunteer hours throughout the year and many other things that Robbie and the Main Street crew does to help the town. If you have any questions, welcome to take those. Thank you.
We have Article 22, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 for the purpose of helping to support the programs of Goffstown nonprofit Crispin's House, Inc., a youth, drug, alcohol, suicide prevention agency. Crispin's House provides prevention programs designed to help kids make positive choices in their lives. Our program includes high school and middle school, monthly youth forums, and volunteer programs, juvenile diversion, Martin Luther Chance, drug and alcohol counseling programs, and financial aid to families that cannot afford after-school care for their children. We are a member of the Greater Manchester Regional Suicide Prevention Initiative. This is submitted by petition. Al Baines, I'm sure you want to speak to this?
Sir. There is a spelling error in this, by the way. The word chance should be change. Okay. Do you want me to make a statement, or do you want to ask questions?
Well, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I think Al's the guy to answer them. Does anybody have any questions? Al, do you want to make a statement about the program and why you submitted your petition?
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Crispin's House is a long-time organization here in Goffstown. We've been around for 24 years. We are basically the only nonprofit drug, alcohol, and suicide prevention agency in the community. We are unique in that respect, in that there are not a lot of these types of agencies around other communities in the state. For many, many years, the cost of our agency was supported by grants from the state of New Hampshire, the Governor's Commission, and through the Hillsborough County incentive funds. We fully supported ourselves with those grants with some small fundraising activities that helped to cover the rest of our costs. However, over the years, the funding that we received from the state and the county has been totally eliminated, forcing us to close the after-school program at Mountain View Middle School. However, fortunately, the YMCA has reopened that program at Mountain View Middle School to help keep our kids safe after school. And we are supporting that program. We advocated for the YMCA to find a way to reopen that program. We collaborated with them. We are urging families to contact the Y to put their kids in that program. And as I mentioned earlier, the late bus has impacted the kids that can attend that program. So right now, we're not funding the after-school program. The Y is. We are willing to help supplement any financial aid that the Y gives to families so that they can, I'm going to turn this around. Yeah, that's easier. So that they can attend that program. We have had no request, however, from any of the families to take advantage of the financial aid that we might offer. The $20,000 that we're looking for is to help supplement our budget. We have about a total budget of about $70,000 annually. That goes to pay the salary of our executive director, who fortunately we have been able to hire. Last year, you might recall, we came in here looking for $62,500. That was almost to fully fund our program. This year, with Christy coming on board, with some funds that we were able to raise through our 3-on-3 basketball tournament, our softball tournament, and fundraising campaigns, we've been able to bring Christy in and give her almost full-time employment. However, we weren't able to give her a lot of visibility to her job in that we couldn't look out 4, 5, 6, 7 months to say, Christy, you're secure in your job and you don't have to worry about going forward. Christy has done a fabulous job going out and finding some grants. Last month, we were able to bring in over $11,000 in donations and grants. We had a $5,000 private donation from a citizen here in Goffstown. So that can tell you what people think in our community of our program. We provide activities for kids, drug, alcohol, suicide prevention activities that help kids make positive choices. We do provide one counseling service for drug and alcohol prevention called Making Change, where kids can come in anonymously if they want. All we need to know is their first name. They sit with counselors. It's a scripted program. It helps kids make decisions about what they want to do with drug and alcohol. The other programs that we do, we run the Youth Forum here at Goffstown High School. We're in the process of starting a youth forum at Mountain View Middle School. We had our first meeting today, which was just absolutely wonderful, with kids from the student government and many, many people from the staff there. These are opportunities for kids and adults to sit at the same table on a monthly basis and talk about the things that are important to them, the things that are bothering them, the things that they see that they need correction or work on. They can talk to the adults and open up their minds and tell us what's going on there. There's no restrictions on what they can say. It's a wonderful, wonderful forum. I would urge any of you to come and sit in on the forum on a monthly basis. The high school one is this coming Friday. It's the second Friday of the month at 10 o'clock in the conference room out at the front office. The Mountain View Middle School one is going to be on the first Tuesday of every month at 3:20 in the afternoon. We also offer an opportunity for kids to volunteer in our community. It's called Volunteens. And we coordinate the activities of kids that want to volunteer by putting them in touch with other nonprofit and service organizations within our community. It puts kids in a safe environment. We don't send kids out to rake the leaves for Mr. Smith. They're going out to help organizations such as Main Street, such as the Food Network, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club. They help Crispin's House at our various programs. And right now we have, I don't know, probably 60 kids that are registered in the program. And we record their hours that they work. And when they're ready to do college applications, job applications, we can supply them with information about the hours that they've worked and volunteered in our community. It looks great on their resumes. We also do juvenile diversion in conjunction with the area police departments, where we have kids that are referred to us rather than going through the court system. They come to us and we provide direction for the kid that offended, keeps them out of the courts, but it also helps them to recognize that the offense that they did is serious and they need to pay back the community. And we work with a committee of volunteers to help them do that. We also, in conjunction with the police department, operate a program called a child attendant program, where if the police take a child into custody, not under arrest, but into custody, we have people that are on a call list that can be called up and they can be sent into the police department and stay with that child until disposition is made. So I'm here looking for help from the community. It's $20,000. It gives us that bit of a cushion to be able to run our programs, have a future, so our wonderful executive director, Christy Curtis, can look forward and not have to worry about her employment with us. Christy does an absolutely fabulous job for us. We're so fortunate to have her to help our program. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Al. Okay. Go ahead. We got a couple people who would like to speak.
And really quickly, Al, thanks very much. I think you could have said and also, and we could be listening to this for another hour and it'll be really good stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you. There are two things that you talked about tonight which are both really important and don't require an enormous amount of investment but require the support of the community. Both of them happen to cost $20,000. Goffstown Main Street builds community. Crispin's House builds community members. If that's part of what we do as a community for the community and for our kids, I would implore you to embrace and recommend those two things when you make your decisions. Thanks very much.
Scott Gross. I just wanted to not speak as a member of the budget committee, but just as a couple of things. I kind of got a little bit of a feeling that this is a school and town and there's competing interests, and I'm glad that Philip said what Philip said, because I think it is all one community. And I wanted to highlight on one thing, and that was what Selectman Pierce said about half an hour or so ago. There is a need to renovate our fire stations. And maybe you haven't heard a whole lot about that, but our fire stations haven't been touched in over 30 years. Many of them. There's significant needs to make those improvements. The Board of Selectmen, in conjunction with the school board, we got together. We had a joint meeting, and we saw, and a lot of us walked through the Bartlett School, and a lot of us walked through Maple Avenue School, and the consensus of our board was that the improvements at Bartlett and Maple Avenue needed to happen first. And I know, Selectman Pierce, you made a comment as a citizen, and I'm making that same comment now that we have to improve our schools, but yet, although I won't be on the Board of Selectmen, I hope that the fire station is going to get its time. If you've gone through our fire stations, you might see them from the outside, but from the inside, they need a lot of work. And I just wanted to make that clear. With respect to, I I know that some folks think that since we're competing for the same dollars, but we're really not. I think we do have to look at this as an entire community. The community does work extremely well together. There's a lot of partnership that goes on between all the different departments, and especially the school department, and that needs to continue. We have to support all of each other in these endeavors if our community is can still continue to be the great community that it is. Thanks.
Ladies first.
Nice jacket.
Get a load of the jacket, please. Kerry Stekowicz, 5 Miles Ave. I'm your local prosecutor. You can see my face from this angle. I want to support, thank you very much, Tess. I want to just lend my support for particularly the Crispin's House pledge that you heard tonight, although what Scott just said is critically important in this time where the state really has kind of looked at the towns and said, we're going to leave you on your own here more and more. And that's becoming a tough nut for us to crack and really a tough thing for us to swallow. Crispin's House in particular does a lot of good in this community where the state no longer is able to provide, or the county where we used to have some very good programming, despite them having a significant surplus, they decided to cut programs such as our in-home based counseling and many of our diversion programs, not only for adults and juveniles. We in fact had licensed alcohol drug abuse counselors available from the county building right here in Goffstown that we lost. We don't have the mental health services we used to. And again, entities like Crispin's House have stepped up and they've done an awful lot of good work. Their diversion work, although it's not consistently 10 kids a month, when we need them, they're there and they do a fabulous job. But again, I reiterate what Scott says. This community is really now, more than ever, in a time fiscally and with the climate that we have politically, we need to look to each other for help. And we need to look to each other for support. So please think that way when you're looking at these budgets and when you're voting. And educate yourselves. Please go out and find out. When you see that there's an article about what unreserved fund balance is, find out what it is, learn about it. Too many people out there go to the polls without educating themselves. So please, thank you. Do what you got to do.
Christy Curtis, 1 Timberwood Drive. I actually have a 7-year-old at Bartlett Elementary. I am also the executive director of Crispin's House. I just recently took on that role after being on the board of directors for 2 years since 2010. And this program is outstanding. I came to this position post being the executive director for New Hampshire Teen Institute, which is a statewide youth prevention program. I have seen different coalitions all around the state that focus on prevention for youth. Goffstown has one of the best ones. I work really closely with the Manchester Coalition that covers the whole region. They look at Crispin's House as a standout. They look at Crispin's House and the Goffstown community, all of the community assets that we have together as something they want to replicate. Bedford is interested in replicating the programs that we run. Many high schools in Manchester are interested in replicating the programs that we run. However, our budget has been so small the past few years with the state and county cuts that we haven't had the funding to have an administrator, and it's just so very important to have an administrator to make these programs work. So that's really what we're looking for. And the other thing I just wanted to add, in case there's any confusion, is that our programs are universal for all of our youth. Any of our youth, there's a program for everyone. So it's not just for youth that are in trouble with drugs and alcohol. It's for your youth that are involved in every club and volunteering, and your overachievers, and then your kids that are on the fringe. It's really just magnificent, the work that is done with our youth. So that's basically my spiel. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Carl Querim, Public Works Director, and I just have a quick comment. I want to make sure your door is open for discussion on this later, if you so choose. Peter raised an issue earlier about fiscal planning, long-term planning, and we've had this discussion, but I want to make sure it's in the record. The town has a fleet of 100 pieces of equipment that we have to maintain, DPW being the largest portion of that fleet. For the second year in a row, well, let me caveat this. We're looking at a budget right now. If you look at what the department head request was for vehicles, we requested over $1 million. That's been cut to $165,000, which I believe is just one police vehicle. There's not a single DPW piece of equipment in this budget. Last year, the only piece of equipment we replaced was a Packer truck. So I just want to implore you, you need to think long term. It is not healthy. In 1992, we got to a point where the fleet was just about condemned. We had to do a huge bond, purchase about 9 pieces of equipment in one bond. It took years to dig out of that hole, and we're quickly backing into that same corner. So I just want to make the comment.
Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, I want to.
This one's on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. A lot of times when we have deliberations in terms of what we're going to be doing with a budget, it has to come from the audience in order for it to be discussed. But as you know, what the Budget Committee knows, what the audience may not know, is one of our 10-wheel dump trucks was taken out of service due to extensive rust and rotting of the chassis. And the Board of Selectmen was working on a potential solution, repair versus replacement. We have run into some problems with respect to that, with regard to a bid that we thought that was awarded, but we may have some difficulties there. But I want to put it on the record that the Board of Selectmen is reserving our right to talk to the Budget Committee again about putting monies in the budget for either the repair or replacement of the 10-wheel dump truck that we thought we were able to do out of last year, this 2012 budget, but that may not be possible. So I just wanted that to be on the record.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? So the numbers that you saw tonight, so we all have an idea when we leave here what we're looking at. If you were to add up the tax impact, it's going to be somewhere around $1.90 per thousand, $1.92, somewhere in that area. So just we don't want any sticker shock. And the Budget Committee went through, and most of it's due, like we said, to downshifting from the state, and then we have a large bond project, which doesn't really affect us that much this year, as we heard, 21 cents or so this year, but in the following years it will. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
I only wish there were more of the members of our community here tonight. Peter, thank you. Everybody who got up and spoke, professionals, lay people, for the education and the information that you shared this evening. I learned things that I didn't know tonight. I wish everybody could be here to hear the explanations. As Carrie said, if you don't know what an unreserved fund balance is, you really ought to find out. And so, Ted, if you'd make sure that this gets on and gets played over and over and over again, so that people who couldn't be here tonight have the opportunity to see it. And again, thank you, everybody.
Wave, everybody.
The audience
Wave.
and at the table.
There we go. We can still have fun, even though it's a town meeting. There we go.
That'll conclude our public hearing on the budget. Thank you all for coming.